You pushed me. Why did you push me? I guess for the Shaverstone boy, she said, and brought her hand out from behind her back. She was crying harder than ever. He saw the plastic bag. He saw the hand inside clutching the wad of toweling. He understood what she meant to do. Perhaps he had done something like it himself. Probably he had. He began screaming. Only the screams weren't really screams at all. His mouth was filled with blood, something had broken inside of his throat, and the sounds he produced were more guttural growls than screams. She jammed the plastic bag between his lips and deep inside his mouth. He had broken a number of teeth in the fall, and she could feel the jagged stumps. If they tore into her skin, she might have some serious explaining to do. She yanked her hand free before he could bite, leaving the plastic bag and the dishwiper behind. She grabbed his jaw and chin. The other hand she put on top of his balding head. The flesh there was very warm. She could feel it throbbing with blood. She jammed his mouth shut on the wad of plastic and cloth. He tried to beat her off, but he only had one arm free, and that was the one that had been broken in the fall. The other was twisted beneath him. His feet paddled jerkily back and forth on the hardwood floor. One of his shoes came off. He was gurgling. She yanked her dress up to her waist, freeing her legs, then lunged forward, trying to straddle him. If she could do that, maybe she could pinch his nostrils shut. But before she could try, his chest began to heave beneath her, and the gurgles became a deep grunting in his throat. It reminded her of how, when she was learning to drive, she would sometimes grind the transmission trying to find second gear, which was elusive on her father's old Chevrolet Standard. Bob jerked, the one eye she could see bulging and cow-like in its socket. His face, which had been a bright crimson, now began to turn purple. He settled back onto the floor. She waited, gasping for breath, her face lathered with snot and tears. The eye was no longer rolling, and no longer bright with panic. She thought he was D. Bob gave one final, titanic jerk and flung her off. He sat up, and she saw his top half no longer exactly matched his bottom half. He had broken his back as well as his neck, it seemed. His plastic-lined mouth yawned. His eyes met hers in a stare she knew she would never forget. But one she could live with, should she get through this. Dar. He fell backward. His head made an egg-like cracking sound on the floor. Darcy crawled closer to him, but not close enough to be in the mess. She had his blood on her, of course, and that was all right. She had tried to help him, it was only natural, but that didn't mean she wanted to bathe in it. She sat up, propped on one hand, and watched him while she waited for her breath to come back. She watched to see if he would move. He didn't. When 5 minutes had gone by according to the little jeweled Michelle on her wrist, the one she always wore when they went out, she reached a hand to the side of his neck and felt for a pulse there. She kept her fingers against his skin until she had counted all the way to 30, and there was nothing. She lowered her ear to his chest, knowing this was the moment where he would come back to life and grab her. He didn't come back to life because there was no life left in him, no beating heart, no breathing lungs. It was over. She felt no satisfaction, let alone triumph, but only a focused determination to finish this and do it right. Partly for herself, but mostly for Donnie and pets. She went into the kitchen, moving fast. They had to know she'd called as soon as she could, if they could tell there had been a delay, if his blood had a chance to coagulate too much, for instance, there might be awkward questions. I'll tell them I fainted, if I have to, she thought. They'll believe that, and even if they don't, they can't disprove it. At least, I don't think they can. She got the flashlight from the pantry, just as she had on the night when she had literally stumbled over his secret. She went back to where Bob lay, staring up at the ceiling with his glazed eyes. She pulled the plastic bag out of his mouth and examined it anxiously. If it was torn, there could be problems. And it was, in 2 places. She shone the flashlight into his mouth and spotted one tiny scrap of Glad bag on his tongue. She picked it out with the tips of her fingers and put it in the bag. Enough, that's enough, Darcelyn. But it wasn't. She pushed his cheeks back with her fingers, first the right, then the left. And on the left side she found another tiny scrap of plastic, stuck to his gum. She picked that out and put it in the bag with the other one. Were there more pieces?